And 10, losing kids. This seems to be the most popular theory about why William Afton started his whole killing spree thing, because seemingly he didn't kill anyone until after Elizabeth and crying child died at the hands of the various animatronics. But there are those who also treat this as a proven fact. But honestly, this is proven to not be the case, okay? It is impossible for William to be a psychotic killer because his kids died. As we learned from FNAF AR's Faz Facts, William made the Funtime animatronics around the same time as the Springlock animatronics. So, from day one, he made the robots that were intended to kill. Plus, if you want to ignore FNAF AR's Faz Facts entirely, the fact that Elizabeth and crying child got killed by animatronics that were designed to kill, hence why they were killed by them, even disproves that idea before FNAF AR. So, while it would make sense, it's not truly the case. And some of these other explanations may end up making more sense. Although, to be frank, I don't think that anyone actually knows the real origin, not even Scott Cawthon. And at 9, divorce. Another popular reason is possibly because William's wife left him, and that drove him crazy. I mean, being a single dad to 3 kids would already be pretty tough, but maybe this idea goes beyond this. A lot of people also assume that William killed his wife, considering how she's not around, and nobody really ever mentions her. This honestly could be an option, but only because we know so little about the home life that William had before the games, or even before 1983 when we see the sister location 8-bit scenes. So theories about this are entirely plausible, even if they just rely on human nature rather than evidence present within the games. I mean, these are human characters after all. They don't have as much meat to them as the theories involving info from the games or even from the books, but it's still interesting to see the possibilities like this. And like, did William get divorced? Was his wife his first victim? Who knows? Probably not even Scott. Honestly, I doubt William's motivation is something that like he thought of when he was throwing out the last game, when he thought that the game would end up failing. Yet here we are, 9 games and like 8 years later almost. And it ain't Phone Guy. Hold on, okay, hold on. Hear me out. I think that there is still the possibility, slight chance that despite what Scott might have said, that the Phone Guy could still be the killer. Now, this is probably almost definitely not the case. This is a list about speculating, right? Well, what if William is indeed the one recording these training tapes, and what we hear is what we see play out in FNAF 3's minigames? I mean, we thought that this was possible before, but then when they gave him a name, we figured that they were different people. But maybe they also gave us Phone Guy's name without us knowing it. I mean, what other reason would he have to be an Ultimate Custom Night? Unless the vengeful spirit heard the recordings and knew what Phone Guy sounded like? Plus, the animatronics bashing on the door could just be when William goes to disassemble them, which accidentally releases their spirits. But the tape's cut off before he ends up getting spring locked. Because, like, I don't know about you, but if I saw the ghosts of my victims, I wouldn't think like, oh, I need to vlog this. We have 2 different versions of Afton in Ultimate Custom Night already, so maybe there is a secret 3rd version, aside from the one we play as at least. And at 7, FNAF 3. Okay, look, the last few numbers may seem to make this not make sense, but listen, okay? Afton, in a sense, does die in FNAF 3, since this was meant to be the final game in the series until the fans were disappointed with the main jump scare, okay? So, prior to Scott releasing FNAF 4, William Afton was canonically dead, and the series was over. But after that, things were more complicated than they ever had been before. And many people do consider Afton dead after getting spring-locked, like I said, which isn't true, since he was being kept alive by the one he should not have killed, aka Crying Child. Oh yeah, you're gonna get mad at me, but it's true. But technically speaking, until the continuation of the story between the time of FNAF 3's release and the day before FNAF 4's release, William was dead. Oh, wait a second. He shows up in the final newspaper in the background, doesn't he? I don't know. Maybe he was never supposed to be dead, but the series was supposed to be. So as far as I'm concerned, if the series dies, so does the character. And it would have stayed that way too if it weren't for you meddling kids and your damn animatronics. Afton would have been dead in the spring Bonnie suit eventually, okay? Never being possessed by his son because he wasn't added. He would have eventually ended up shutting down just due to the wear of the animatronic, since Henry wouldn't have kept setting fires that would remove all the rust and whatnot. At least I think that's how it would work. And eventually he'd have been forgotten when Poppy Playtime came out, so yeah, this counts for me. And at 6, Glitch Trap. Currently, post-True Security Breach ending, there seem to be 2 instances of Afton roaming the halls of the Pizzaplex. Or I guess, one roaming and one trapped in a giant ghost of animatronics past blob. So, this really begs a philosophical question: is Glitch Trap truly an instance of William Afton? Because if it is, then everything we should know about the series and how possession works in the FNAF universe is wrong. Currently, from what we've established in this universe, there are 2 main ways to actually maintain life after what should have been death in this FNAF world, universe, whatever. Or at least in the games, there's two, okay? The books also have human robots, but that hasn't been proven canonical yet. The games have Remnant and Possession, which are connected but aren't the same thing. Remnant is seemingly a byproduct of Possession, being a combination of metal and soul, showcased in the books as the 5 endoskeletons of the original Freddy's animatronics possessed by the original missing children's incident victims, and then Possession comes before that. But Afton wasn't possessing anything, he was being possessed. And Glitch Trap is an intentional feature within FNAF VR, along with also being a virus, or I guess the virus took the form of the main antagonist that was meant to be in the VR game. But it also takes control over Vanessa. The only explanation here is that either Vanessa is a robot, but then again, if she is, then why is she looking at herself in the rooftop ending if she doesn't have a soul because she is a robot? So maybe this needs its own video, maybe it doesn't, I don't know, let me know. Halfway through into number 5, Henry. In the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is also the year that Afton's life starts going downhill in the worst ways possible. But he starts off killing kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, and I'm not even a parent. So I can only imagine how this must have felt for Henry. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put William down, okay? I'd be doing it with myself, with my bare hands. Especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old, okay? Afton got lucky that Henry didn't have more initiative in my mind, okay? I have no idea why he didn't, because I'd rather go to jail for killing the man that killed my daughter than chase him for 50 years trying to burn him to the ground. But like, come on, okay? Who would really blame him too? Afton got so lucky that Henry is just a little who wants to use fire to stop him, okay? I wouldn't care about going to prison if Afton had killed my kid. No chance in hell, especially when she was that young. I would have choked him out with my bare hands and wrenched his neck. Also, hello to the jury. In it for zombie. There's also the possibility that Afton has been a zombie this entire time, and honestly, that makes me extremely angry. I'm masking it though. Because out of all the things that the FNAF series has done, this would be the cheapest and the worst. Forget Dream Theory, forget this all being a storybook, forget everything else. This would be the dumbest thing that FNAF could do, since it would basically come out of nowhere, okay? People already think that Michael is a zombie after getting innards shoved into him, but zombies aren't purple, guys, okay? And then making that into yet another like father like son parallel would be so stupid and such a horrible retcon that it would be worse than it all being a dream, especially after establishing that Afton was being possessed prior to the spring locking, which would most likely have ended up with his death, and if he was made into a zombie, that would probably be his death point, okay? It would just change too much about the series for things to make sense, and would probably result in a whole lot of rage from the community, or at least I hope everyone would find this stupid enough to get mad at, because I would, and I want to be validated. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Dream Theory. There is also the possibility that none of this was real, and that everything is actually a dream, which kind of negates the whole origin story thing, because in a dream, we don't need to worry about origin stories. We just worry about what's happening in the present moment. I mean, dreaming about yourself having a nightmare is a whole other level of meta, like Inception style, but also not really, because in this scenario, Crying Child would actually be dreaming about dreaming, whereas in Inception, they don't know that any of those dreams are actually dreams. It's also interesting since if Crying Child is dreaming all of this, he dreams that he also died, but then somehow the dream continues past that, which I've never had happen before. If I die in a dream, I wake up, which in my opinion makes more of a case for him being the vengeful spirit, but I don't like Dream Theory because it feels cheap, so I'm not even going to entertain the thought of it any more than I have to. If Dream Theory is correct, which seems to be no longer the case, but maybe it was intended beforehand, then the origin of William is totally obsolete, so let's hope it's not Dream Theory. But ultimately, in a number 2, Time Loop. Could Afton be stuck in a Groundhog Day-like scenario? Instead of a day, it's however many years. I mean, this one is absolutely wild and 100% guaranteed not to be the case, but ever since time travel was introduced into the series, it's a whole other thing now. Literally, the first Fazbear Frights book had to do us like that. Anyway, what if William actually started living his life on repeat, the same same thing over and over. That would drive anyone crazy. I mean, like, just look at what happened to Bill Murray. But if we ended up thinking about it, if William didn't think that there were consequences and then he went berserk, maybe he started offing people because he could, but then the cycle broke. It's absolutely ridiculous, and again, 100% not the case, but it's pretty interesting to consider. I mean, the time-traveling ball pit had the golden Bonnie and was introduced for a reason, right? Maybe it's to show that Afton is all about time travel or something along those lines. Again, no way this is real, so don't yell at me in the comments. It's a stupid idea, but it's fun to think about nonetheless. And finally, in at number 1, psychopath. There's also the classic reason that there is no reason, and that William is just your typical run-of-the-mill psychopath who has no remorse for any of his actions. Now, the vengeful spirit, referred to as the one you should not have killed, seems to prevent this theory from being true, since if he had no remorse, nobody would be considered the one you should not have killed. But remember that actually, they named themselves. William didn't actually name them because the manifestations in his head were made by this vengeful spirit who wanted him to suffer. So William might not have considered them, whether it be Cassidy or Crying Child, one that he should not have killed, or at least had a hand in killing, but they could have considered it and like, you shouldn't have killed me because now I'm possessing you. Like, it's entirely plausible that William has no regrets for any of his actions, hence why he continued his killing after losing 2 out of his 3 children to it. I mean, like, he even sent Michael down there to see his sister possessing a robot who then also tried to kill him. So, I think it's safe to say that he probably doesn't care about losing people that he should love. He probably only had kids to actually seem normal, like those who are considered psychopaths or more commonly sociopaths. They do things to try and fit in, usually. In at 10, Springlock. A lot of people still think that Afton died while being spring-locked in FNAF 3. And honestly, when the game came out, this was actually seemingly correct. I mean, we never really saw Afton go limp like he truly died, but for all intents and purposes, Afton was dead in FNAF 3. But then, as more games came out and more was added to the story and to the lore, Afton was shown to never have died in the game, since, you know, he was, as we now know, being kept alive by the one you should not have killed, who was possessing him as an individual and was keeping him alive so that he could continue to suffer for all of his crimes. So honestly, before William even started his whole always coming back thing, he came back from the dead, at least technically speaking, which I still think is damn impressive, okay? I haven't died before, even technically, unless we count like on the inside or my dreams, but hey, we don't need to talk about that at the start of a video, right? In at 9, explosion. Okay, so, well, physically speaking, William dies in The Man in Room 1280, the 3rd story from the 5th Fazbear Frights book. Quite extravagantly, might I add, exploding into a pile of mush right before a pastor's eyes. But like, how would that have been possible? How could William just have exploded like that? It's not something that you really think about, and I think I have an explanation, but it's certainly a bit more interesting than spontaneous combustion. William knew about possession and how it works, okay? He knew about agony and how his daughter got scooped and his son was crunched, so what if he tried to ensure his own survival by intentionally causing himself extreme agony, injecting or installing some form of explosive that when triggered or when in the vicinity of a Fazbear warehouse or trigger device would cause him to explode violently from the inside out, creating what is possibly one of the most agonizing ways to die, even in the FNAF series. I mean, this guy was absolutely mental, okay? Even potentially injecting himself with molten soul metal remnant in an effort to keep himself alive. So for me, it isn't out of the question that William inserted an explosive device into himself. But considering all that comes after this, Glitch Trap and whatnot, and the fact that Burn Trap still has William's body inside, I don't think that this one is really canon, and I don't think that this actually caused William to die. And if you're enjoying this video, guys, hit like, okay? It really helps us out, especially with the algorithm almighty. Praise be its name. So yeah, did you do it? Why the heck not? Okay, do it now, babe, please. In at 8, second Springlock. I say second, even though technically Afton's second trapping was in the books, but also some may not consider that possible in the main series, but you know what? In the context of the number, it makes sense. So, could William have suffered a Springlock failure before getting trapped in the Spring Bonnie suit like we see in FNAF 3? It's possible. Explains why I say again as well, because, well, it would have been first, but it it's again on this list. Since William is described to have scars that are consistent with a Springlock failure in the novels before becoming Springtrap. So, could it have happened in the games? Maybe. We don't really see William in a visual sense in the games, aside from him being purple. So, I don't know. Maybe William was the reason the Springlock suits were retired in the first place, since we hear of an unfortunate incident at the sister location. So, is that unfortunate incident William? There are plenty of people that it could be, none of which are named, but William having to deal with his own injury would certainly get them put out of commission for a time, but with William then continuing to use the suit to kill people and then putting it on again like we see in the FNAF 3 cutscene suggests that this scenario is unlikely, but you know what, it's still possible, so it's still a possible death. And it's 7, accident. Now, aside from me, maybe this whole deal was an accident, right? Maybe more so than just his kids getting killed by robots intended to kill. Maybe William's real first victim wasn't Charlotte. Maybe he did kill his wife, but accidentally. Maybe they were a bit too rough, or maybe she had a condition that made her susceptible to falling or something, and William accidentally tripped her. Maybe when that happened, in whatever way it did, William saw the life leave her eyes and liked it, but then wanted to see how it would look on a kid. So he said about making robots that would help him see it. But his kids got instead. But then he still liked the sight of it so much that he continued. Maybe he wasn't built like it, but the sight of watching someone die, maybe even his wife or lover, awakened something deep within him that then propelled him to kill. It's nothing new, it's happened to plenty of people before, but William is dangerous. He knows how to cover his tracks. Despite the absolute buffoonery of his methods, the cops were none the wiser. Or maybe he was just paying them off. In at 6, demon deal. This may be because my brain is watching too much Supernatural, but the possibility does exist that in a world with possession, living corpses, sentient biological code that can possess animatronics and people, and where spirits can possess people to keep them alive to suffer, that there is in fact also a hell and demons. And if there are demons, maybe this is why William is absolutely god insane. Maybe he sold his soul to a demon so that his business would be successful. However, so that the Reaper wouldn't come to collect, William decided to start making sacrifices. Or maybe it was demanded of him as part of his deal or something. Maybe the demon he sold his soul to wanted a little snack every once in a while, you know, some baby back ribs. Or maybe, due to this deal, he seeked out getting possessed by a vengeful spirit so that he wouldn't actually be able to be sent to hell. Or maybe that was only a theory, but he was willing to try anything in order to keep himself from eternal damnation. Just an idea. I mean, it's definitely unlikely, probably like 99% not the case, but it's still interesting. Halfway through in at number 5, meta theory. Now, honestly, this isn't possible, not even in the slightest, unless Scott had some seriously messed up story in mind. But my meta theory is just because I want a chance to yell in this video. And to be frank, this would be my serial killer origin if I was Afton, okay? What if somehow, some way, William ended up seeing the FNAF Rule 34 art that's online, specifically about his various forms, particularly Springtrap. I mean, that would be pretty blasphemous if I'm honest. And time travel does exist in the FNAF universe thanks to Into the Pit. So in theory, Afton could have gone to the future and seen the absurd Springtrap fan art and then gone back and had been so flabbergasted and traumatized from seeing himself lubing up Troll Tower that he went nuts and started killing the people responsible for his horrific perversion of his life. Whether it be specific people that did that or just the demographic that would grow up to then do that, okay? It could have just been the ships as well, like seeing himself shipped with the likes of animatronics that his kids end up possessing would certainly cause me to lash out. So yeah, not possible in the slightest, but funny as hell to think about, and frankly, understandable. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, FNAF 6. Could William have been dead before FNAF 6 takes place? I think it's a possibility, technically, because like, what happened to Springtrap between games to cause such horrific warps to his body? Like, sure, he was burnt in FNAF 3, but we also see him alive and not all that damaged in Sister Location's Night 7 ending cutscene. So, where did all of this additional damage and warping come from? The head becomes larger somehow, and so do the feet. I don't know, okay? This genuinely doesn't make any sense. We know that they're the same person, thanks to Ultimate Custom Night's voice lines, but I'm so confused as to what could have happened to cause this. I'm sure the extra damage comes from possibly fending off wild animals, since, you know, he's still a body, a rotting corpse that would attract scavengers. So how did the head of the suit get bigger? It's not like it evolved, it's not like it leveled up like freaking Magikarp from punching all these wolves. My only guess is that like, William either broke into a Fazbear warehouse and tried to like reassemble himself, or I don't know, maybe the gas gases from an actual decaying corpse, if he was dead prior to this, caused the head to expand, but even that wouldn't make sense. I don't know. We see so much damage. Maybe being a corpse just caused the suit to mess up because Scott was like, that's what I want. But ultimately, into number 2, the Blob. The true ending of FNAF Security Breach is seemingly one of the most interesting parts of the game because it contains a whole load of little things to watch out for. It also actually ends the game, which at this point I think is probably the best thing. After making our way into Burn Trap's area, Freddy is going to be taken over by Afton's newest form, and then it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using 3 monitors with corresponding buttons that activate fire and seemingly trigger his weakness, which is a whole other story. Players, you'll need to avoid the animatronics that come out after you, but you can use doors to lock them out. You can use Freddy to scare him off. There's a lot that you can do. And then when Burn Trap is finally burned even more, I guess at this point he's just trapped, because like in math it cancels out, right? The Blob, which was like a tentacle monster thing that was attacking us, then attacks Burn Trap, William, and then tries to make sure he doesn't get free, okay? Then we run away, but my question is, does the Blob actually kill William? I don't know. Like, there are death animations in the game files, apparently, allegedly, I haven't seen them, but they weren't used, so we can't really consider that canon. Plus, the whole I always come back thing is definitely annoying, and I thought it would have ended before this game, but clearly not, so I don't know anymore. Just God, for fuck's sakes, please let William be dead. And finally, in at number 1, Never Died. Currently, what we know about Remnant and Agony tells us that to destroy it properly, we need to burn it, hence why there are so many damn fires in this series. FNAF 3, 6, and Security Breach all end with something or someone getting burned. FNAF 3's fire was all about dealing with Springtrap, FNAF 6 was about putting everyone who knew about the atrocities to rest, and then in FNAF 9 we burned Trap multiple times to try to get him to stop possessing Freddy. And then it's all because Henry learned that the only way to destroy Remnant and put these things to rest was through fire. But how is that really like, is that really the thing? Because, like, all 3 fires haven't really done anything. They haven't done shit. We've been told that fire is the only thing hot enough to burn off the Remnant, but it's also been described as Remnant liquid metal. So if the soul-infused metal can become a liquid, then how is it possible to just burn off the soul part? That's not how metallurgy works. I think it's metallurgy. I don't know. That's not how things work, okay? That's not how the universe works. Dr. Talbot is lying. He's William, alright? There's a whole video on it. Go check it out, alright? William is lying. He made up the fire thing so he couldn't be killed. Location. The location of the various crimes does actually factor into its effectiveness, believe it or not. The idea that William was killing in his own Fazbear restaurants is a ridiculous concept that in reality should have gotten him sent to prison. The saying is something along the lines of like, don't crap where you eat, which some take literally, others take as don't date people you see on a regular basis, and in this scenario I suggest that it should mean don't kill people where you're seen on a regular basis, or you know, constantly, because it's your own business, especially if it's the business that like targets kids. And while yes, this doesn't instantly make you guilty, but come on, the first thing that anyone would do in this situation, not even a cop, would be question everyone who was working when whatever had happened, or whoever it was disappeared. And let's be realistic, an incident the likes of the missing children's incident from 1985 would ruin a business permanently. None of this somehow they stay open bullshit, because in the real world they would end up closing permanently, because no parent would want to go to a place where 5 kids went missing, especially when no bodies were found, which could maybe help them, but it certainly wouldn't help much. If Afton had any competitors, any at all, alright? Even this world's version of Chuck E. Cheese, Afton should have gone there. If he had any competitors, or literally anywhere else, would have made more sense. However, he chose to kill where he eats, and that's probably one of the worst decisions that he could have made. Well, aside from, you know, the killing in the first place. Animatronics. While the animatronics are an entirely other mistake, this time around I want to talk about how stupid it was to hide the bodies in the animatronics. Like, how the f*** did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would already ruin the place, especially when its focus is eating pizza. The heat from the animatronic insides would speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that they were leaking blood and mucus, as well as smelling like death. If this was real, and William getting away with it wasn't important for the plot, he would have been caught instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Hell, they even make bone-crushing sounds when they move. We should probably check this out. Oh look, turns out we found those missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest for the murder of Cassidy, Fritz, Jeremy, Gabriel, Susie. Boom! Instantly. I don't know how this wasn't an open and shut case. Straight up, William was so goddamn stupid that he shouldn't have made it to the first game. Not to mention how stupid he was by building the Funtime animatronics with these item containment chambers, as he was calling it, since the cops ended up questioning him about why he made those design choices in the sister location opening scene. Plus, he superpowered the jaw of Fredbear from Fredbear's Family Diner to end up giving it a jaw that accidentally killed his son. Absolute moron. William, not the son. It wasn't his fault that he got his head shoved in there. If he had put it in there himself, it would have been his fault, but he didn't. Enemies. Now, while William did choose a set of easy marks, since, you know, kids can't really defend themselves against a dude in a part animatronic furry suit, but he's a moron for exclusively killing that demographic only. I don't know why he did that. Sure, it's easier on him, especially when he's fully combined with an animatronic, but Henry serves as the opposition to William, and the reason William ends up burning multiple times. It's not Henry's fault that he turned into Springtrap, but it's certainly his fault that he turned into Scrap Trap, since this is most likely due to the FNAF 3 fire, and the FNAF 6 fire turned him into Burn Trap. So Henry has definitely been a pain in William's side for ages. So, in essence, every single animatronic who is supposed to be set free by a cleansing fire hasn't been so far. The only time we've seen souls actually be put to rest is in FNAF 3's Happiest Day minigame, which involved no fire and just putting the souls to rest by giving them what they wanted, a birthday party. But how could that be possible? Like, Dr. Talbert wouldn't lie to us. He's researching so his little girl wouldn't die, right? Well, this is where this theory starts to blow your mind. I don't think that Dr. Talbert, as described in the FNAF Fazbear Frights books, is a real person. Or rather, I don't think that Dr. Talbert is truly his name. Let's think about it. Who else do we know with a daughter in a compromising position who would have an endless flow of remnant from an undisclosed source and a close personal friend working as his opposite? That's right, ladies and gentlemen, William frickin' Afton. William Afton, my friends, is the true identity of Dr. Talbert. William is no stranger to using aliases either. Remember Dave Miller from the Silver Eyes? Exactly. And this connection only gets stronger the more you look at it. See, Talbert's daughter ends up being impersonated by Eleanor, who in the Fazbear Frights books is, like, described to be Baby. She's described as basically Baby, just with a longer neck. So both daughters in this scenario also end up becoming Baby at some point. Renelle through being impersonated, and Elizabeth when she possessed Baby through, you guessed it, Remnant. And Talbert and Eleanor are attacked by the Stitch Wraith. What does that relate to? Perhaps the son, who is part animatronic, that's been working to undo his father's plans? Michael? Have we seen the animatronics in the games? No, so how can we take any of what's being said in the Fazbear Frights epilogues as fact? The baby blob turned out to be real, but everything else could simply be a metaphor. And Renelle might not even be meant to represent Elizabeth. It could be meant to represent Crying Child, making Eleanor Elizabeth and the Stitch Wraith Michael, and honestly, that sounds like a much more plausible solution than what's being described in these books, especially with the revelation that Gregory could, again, be a rebuilt Crying Child robot, because all these experiments with Remnant worked. If this was truly describing William and Crying Child and Michael and Elizabeth, this would make
perfect sense with the story. This is like a recap of what's been going on with FNAF. FNAF 4, crying child dies. So William promises that he will put him back together by finding Remnant after he kills the 5 missing children and then disassembling them in FNAF 3's minigames when he releases the spirits and then gets trapped in the Springlock suit. But then we also learn in the original novel trilogy that the Remnant from the original 5 animatronics was injected into the Funtime animatronics. So while the Funtime animatronics have the souls of the 5 missing children all combined into one, they also are serving as an experiment for how he can use it to bring back his son. And he even injects Eleanor, who was impersonating Renelle, with the Remnant, just as he recreates Crying Child into Gregory. So here's how I see it. William as Talbot, through, I'm guessing, just journals that Henry just somehow stumbled onto, were made to spread the rumor of Remnant needing to burn, to be destroyed, so that if Henry ever tried to stop William, he wouldn't be able to. That's why William knows he'll always come back. He's rigged the game, and in doing so, ensured the survival of himself, his daughter, and his 2 sons. Renelle is a representation of Crying Child, having been bitten at his birthday party in 1983 that William is trying to save. Eleanor is the power-hungry daughter Elizabeth that only wants the Remnant for herself, even willing to abandon her father to die to live another day, as we see with the Afton amalgamation, or even kill her father, as we potentially see at the end of the true FNAF Security Breach ending. And the Stitch Wraith is Michael, at first misunderstood, killing his creator like Michael tried in the FNAF 3 and 6 Fire, but in reality trying to right the wrongs of his father before him and bring peace to his family. And as we see in Security Breach, they accomplished their goals. Gregory, representing Crying Child, is back. He and Freddy, representing Michael, stopped William, and Vanny, Elizabeth, gets to fight another day. Remnant is a key object in the Five Nights at Freddy series. Remnant is the term for a soul that possesses inanimate objects, making it the reason behind the paranormal occurrences in the series. It is believed that William Afton started his killings as a way to obtain Remnant in order to gain immortality, although this is impossible since William only discovered Remnant after the original 5 animatronics got possessed. So he was already killing before he found out about Remnant. But Remnant also appears as a collectible in FNAF AR Special Delivery. But with everything we've come to learn about this series, is it possible that what we know is a lie? That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. According to police reports that saw the substance in the FNAF books, it's appeared to be a bubbling liquid mercury. The appearance of this glowing silvery liquid is similar to Remnant depicted in the novel trilogy, particularly in the 4th closet, which makes sense given that Remnant, as we know, is a combination of human soul and metal, which is created when a soul possesses a metal-based object like an animatronic endoskeleton. In the Fazbear Frights books, where most of this lore comes from, its powers are expanded upon. Remnant can be used to make already living beings even more powerful through the power of positive memories. Kind of like how everyone gets defeated by the power of love in The Flash. The primary scientist studying Remnant is Dr. Talbot, a friend of Phineas Taggart who studied its negative counterpart, Agony, which now means that the Agony that possesses animatronics and the human soul are 2 different things, but seemingly both of which had to come from someone who died. Talbot studied Remnant because his daughter Renelle was sick when she was younger, and he wanted to hold on to the good memories of her in case he lost her. Remnant could also be isolated and put into a certain object, so Talbot created a pendant made from Remnant metal as a gift for Renelle. Keep in mind that this Remnant is also just a form of metal. It's kind of like a metal compound, like Damascus steel, but instead of a lot of layers of steel, it's metal and souls melted down, and then that is liquid Remnant, but then as a solid, I guess you could say it's a Remnant nugget. It's unclear how Dr. Talbot got his hands on such a large amount of Remnant, but he had a steady supply that somehow was consistently delivered to his house. This also got the attention of an evil entity named Eleanor, who was introduced, or I guess created in the story, to be beautiful from 1:35 AM, the second Fazbear Frights book. Her goal was to obtain Remnant for herself to become even more powerful, so that she could spread pain and suffering across the world using the power of positive vibes. However, what we currently know know about Remnant and Agony tells us that to destroy it properly, we need to burn it. Hence why there have really been so many fires in this series. FNAF 3, 6, and 9 all end with something or someone getting set on fire. FNAF 3's fire was all about dealing with Springtrap, and FNAF 6 was about putting everyone who knew about the atrocities that occurred at Freddy's to rest, and sending William to hell. And then, in FNAF 9, we burn Trap multiple times to get him to stop possessing Freddy, and to again try to kill him. Because Gregory is not above killing. That's a topic for another day. And this is because Henry learned that the only way to destroy Remnant and put these beings to rest was through fire. But is that really how we deal with these animatronics and people? Because like, while 9 out of 10 doctors recommend Crest Pro Health toothpaste, 3 out of 3 FNAF fires haven't worked. We have been told that fire is the only thing that is hot enough to burn off Remnant and to actually destroy it, aside from the fact that matter cannot be created nor destroyed, but it's also been described as a liquid metal. Liquid metal is a hell of a lot hotter than your typical run-of-the-mill gasoline fire, trust me, okay? I have the expertise in this department.
And let's be honest, I don't think the Oxford Dictionary takes into account extreme agony possession as a contributing factor when talking about how someone is alive. So does being a sentient AI count as being alive? Well, it depends on the person and their personal definition of being alive. While sentient AI would probably be able to feel and go through some of the living process, such as emotion and whatnot, an AI, sentient or not, has no DNA. It has no cellular structure and doesn't undergo the process of cellular division and replication. It can't heal a wound. I mean, it can't really be damaged. Sentience is the capacity to be aware of feelings and sensations, not to actually be a living organism. Even if they have a body, like one of the animatronics from the games, those aren't alive, despite being aware that they're possessed. Possession isn't living, so no, still, William isn't alive. Now, the really tricky thing to determine is if possessing a living being, as William does with Vanny, would count as being alive. And for this, I feel like we need to look at DID. Dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder, is a mental health condition. People with DID have 2 or more separate personalities, and these personalities control their behavior at different times. Each identity has its own personal history, traits, likes, and dislikes. Now, I do not experience this or know anyone who does, so if I say something or I get something wrong, I apologize in advance. But this is probably the closest thing we can really get to having a real-world equivalent to what is going on with Vanny and William, since there are now 2 personalities inside of Vanny, who each control their own behavior at different times, as we learn in the FNAF AR emails, where Vanessa will go from googling torture and how to induce compliance in human subjects to help and the migration pattern of bees in seemingly no time, literally searching up flowers one day and how far a human being can be cut in half before losing consciousness the next. This seems to be similar to how DID has been documented and described by those who live with it. I mean, I don't mean like the evil part, I mean the split part and the losing time part, at least from what I've read online, which is probably not perfectly accurate. So while these personalities aren't born from the same mind, they certainly share the same space. Both personalities, though, while not having separate bodies, would be considered alive since they have DNA and experience cell division and replication, even if it's not all the time. So in that way, William is considered alive while present in Vanny's mind, but not alive as his coded form of glitch trap, or even if he ends up transferring his code into a robot at the end of Security Breach, as has been hinted at with the arm in the end of the gameplay trailer. The main question we need to ask is what counts as being alive, because since maybe even the first game, William has been possessed by the one you should not have killed, one of his victims that ends up possessing him rather than an animatronic. So he's survived quite a lot that would have normally killed him. The Oxford Dictionary defines being alive as, quote, living, not dead. Which, I mean, is fairly obvious, but I was hoping for something with a little more meat so that I could maybe find a loophole. But by the dictionary definition of alive, no, William Afton is not alive. We are vividly described his explosive death in The Man in Room 1280, the final story from the 5th Fazbear Frights book Bunny Call. But that's not why you clicked on this video. You clicked so that you could yell at me in the comments saying, of course he's alive. This video is pointless. Why did you do this? So maybe there's a way that I can get this video to 10 minutes after all. I mean, we could consider keeping the memory of someone alive being alive, since after all, Henry does his damnedest to make sure that everyone forgets what William did in the FNAF 6 ending, saying, quote, "This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of any tragedy should." But we know the memory doesn't fade, since even after the simulated pizzeria burns down, Fazbear Entertainment is still kicking and still uses what William did to make profit and even strengthen their brand. Like how hotels will make their entire brand about being haunted if enough people say that it is, like the Queen Mary or even the Farhampton Inn from How I Met Your Mother. They made a whole virtual reality game revolving around William's axe, which features an AI version of him in the form of Springtrap, not even talking about the Spirit Code version of Glitchtrap. And with the special delivery service, they are also actively shipping out recreations of Springtrap to everyone, even going so far as to make alternate versions like Toxic Springtrap, Clown Springtrap, and The Curse, which I have to admit is probably the most fitting name for the Fazbear Entertainment to give this character. But to them, it isn't a character. He's a real person, a real serial killer. That's like shipping out robotic versions of Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy to parents and kids. I say especially him because Clown Springtrap is definitely inspired by John Wayne Gacy, and you know, the similar target of kids. But I mean, like, how incredibly offensive would that be if a company did that in our world? They would be instantly cancelled and even investigated to see if that was meant to be a warning or some kind of threat. But from what we know, nothing of the sort has happened to Fazbear Entertainment. Killing Henry would have resulted in nobody being able to chase William, basically. Like, Michael might have figured it out, but he wouldn't really be in a position to do anything without Henry. Henry gave him the FNAF 3 job probably, and definitely gave him the FNAF 6 job, so if William had just offed Henry after offing his daughter, he would have had a much easier time. At least, I'd think so. That's why every comic villain wants to kill the hero, right? Because if they do, they'll have a much easier time committing all their various crimes. So how is this any different? It shouldn't be. William is an absolute buffoon for not killing Henry when he had the chance. I'm sure it was Henry reporting him to the cops, like, "You killed this man's daughter. Of course he's gonna have some form of vendetta against your ass. He's coming for blood and he actively tries to kill you multiple times." That's not something that you should have just ignored. You should have just killed Henry after his daughter, because honestly it makes sense. Then you kill his wife or the mother of Charlotte, as long as she's in the picture, knows about it, and actually cares, because sometimes they don't. But mom's gonna go after anyone who wronged their child, okay? Oh, that's something to witness, I'm telling you. Even my mom is vicious as hell, and she's like the sweetest woman in the world. So, you just get rid of the family, alright? Especially when it's your business partner. God, you're stupid. And while William may never have been caught for these acts, that's simply because he couldn't get caught or the plot would make no sense. So ultimately, the game had to find an excuse for his ridiculous behavior. But William could have done wonders if he had just been slightly more intelligent and maybe actually thought about things. Killing kids in your own pizzeria is horrible for business, so do that somewhere else, okay? If he had, he wouldn't have hid the bodies in the animatronics, which would have prevented the kids from attaching their souls to the animatronics that they were stuffed into. Thus, William wouldn't have had to disassemble them, which accidentally released their souls, causing him to hide in his Springtrap suit. The Spring bodysuit would have failed without him inside, thus preventing Springtrap from being created, and William wouldn't have been sealed behind a wall for 30 years. During those 30 years, he'd still be possessed by the one you should not have killed, since they didn't latch onto an animatronic in the first place, they latched onto him, and he'd be unable to properly die still, but he'd have an extra 30 years to work on bringing his kid back to life. He wouldn't have needed to send Michael to get baby from Afton Robotics' storage facility, and Michael would have ended up fine. Fazbear Frights wouldn't have opened, resulting in the place never burning down, and the FNAF 6 game wouldn't have needed to take place. There would have been no need to repair the company image in FNAF VR. William would have been probably a millionaire, and he could have used that money to study ways to bring his son back. perhaps discovering Remnant along the way, similar to how Henry created the Ella doll in the novels. William could have poured his grief into something, watched it become possessed, and then worked on recreating that in a robot version of his dead children. If his children even died anyway. Since Fazbear's wouldn't have closed, he wouldn't have needed to open Circus Babies, resulting in Elizabeth staying alive. And since Crying Child wouldn't have seen her get scooped, he wouldn't fear the animatronics. Thus Michael not needing to put his head in the Fredbear mouth because he thought it was funny, because his brother was scared. His brother wouldn't have been scared, so Michael wouldn't have needed to do that. William also just wouldn't have supercharged Fredbear's jaw, so even if Crying Child did get his head in there, which again I guess would technically be possible, he still wouldn't have died because of it. All of this simply goes back to William's first mistake, which was choosing to kill people in his own establishment. If that first kill also wasn't his business partner's daughter, nobody would have been suspicious of him and everything would have gone his way. Okay? Afton is smart. However, he could have been a lot smarter at the start, which would have resulted in him having an easy time on his killing spree, but I guess that wouldn't make for a very interesting game series, would it?